The most ordinary moments often become the most pivotal. For David Miller, it was a Tuesday, a day like any other, filled with the familiar hum of his Dallas garage, the scent of engine oil, and the quiet joy of a life built on simple truths. He loved the feel of a wrench in his hand, the satisfaction of bringing an old car roaring back to life. His world revolved around the genuine smiles of his customers and the comforting presence of his wife, Maria, and their two bright-eyed kids back home. Maybe he'd been saving up for that fishing trip with his son, or finally gotten around to fixing the leaky faucet that had dripped endlessly in their kitchen. These were the quiet triumphs, the mundane threads that wove the fabric of David's perfectly ordinary, perfectly happy life. But then the threads began to fray. It started small, almost imperceptibly, with a detail easily overlooked: a broken taillight. A minor traffic infraction, the kind most of us brush off with a sigh and a quick fix. He was pulled over a routine stop. The officer, polite but firm, asked for his license and registration. Then came the standard procedure, the one that's supposed to protect and serve a mugshot. Just a quick flash, a fleeting moment frozen in time. David probably thought nothing of it. Just another Tuesday, he might have grumbled to himself. He couldn't have known that this single quick flash photograph taken under the mundane fluorescent lights of a police station would become the ghostly silhouette that overshadowed his future, twisting the very fabric of his existence. Weeks later, that ghost materialized. His world, once so meticulously built, shattered with the force of a wrecking ball. He was accused of a heinous crime he didn't commit. The accuser, Elena Rodriguez, a woman whose life had been violently ripped apart by a brutal assault. Elena was brave, desperate for justice, and absolutely convinced she had identified her attacker. But here's the chilling truth about trauma and memory. In the aftermath of terror, desperate for answers, the mind can heartbreakingly latch onto a plausible image, even if it's the tragically wrong one. Elena, scarred and seeking desperately for closure, saw David's face in that lineup. "That's him," she whispered, her voice trembling but firm, her finger pointing at David's photo. I remember his eyes." And in that moment of raw vulnerability fueled by a searing need for closure, she believed he was the monster. It's truly agonizing to think how easily a victim's desperate need for justice can, in a terrible twist of fate, lead to an innocent person's undoing. David's arrest wasn't just a physical restraint, it was a psychological terror. He stood there bewildered as the handcuffs clicked shut. "There must be some mistake," he stammered, his voice hoarse, his mind racing. I was at home that night with my family." The officers' faces remained impassive. The world suddenly tilted, and every familiar comfort was replaced by the cold, hard stare of suspicion. He was no longer David Miller, the mechanic. He was, in the eyes of the law, a criminal. And as the cell door clanged shut, the chilling echo of his shattered life reverberated, a haunting prelude to the labyrinth he was about to enter. The clang of that cell door was just the first jarring note in a symphony of despair. For David, the shock of accusation quickly morphed into the bewildering reality of navigating a system that seemed less concerned with finding the truth and more focused on securing a conviction. This wasn't a journey through a well-lit courtroom. It was a descent into a labyrinth of injustice where every turn seemed to lead him further from the light. Once Elena identified David, even through a hazy photo, an insidious process took hold within the investigation: confirmation bias. The human mind, and by extension a system under relentless pressure, often seeks to confirm its initial theories, subtly filtering out anything that contradicts them. It's as if the investigation inadvertently narrowed every path leading back to that initial flawed identification. We've seen it play out time and again. Police under pressure to deliver justice to a traumatized victim, and prosecutors eager for convictions, can inadvertently allow these subtle biases to skew the entire process. David's trial wasn't just a legal proceeding, it was a relentless, dehumanizing ordeal. Imagine the sterile coldness of the courtroom, the hushed whispers of the gallery, the unwavering, scrutinizing gaze of the jury. Every word spoken, every piece of evidence presented felt like a tightening noose around his innocent neck. David, a man whose hands understood wrenches better than legal jargon, found himself utterly outmatched. His own public defender, likely grappling with a staggering caseload, fought valiantly but against overwhelming odds. This isn't just about a lack of money, it's about the very architecture of the system, where those with fewer resources often receive less, regardless of their innocence. It's a reality too many in marginalized communities understand intimately. a subtle systemic bias that often stacks the deck from the start. While some nations have implemented blind eyewitness procedures, where the officer showing photos doesn't know who the suspect is, preventing unconscious cues, such safeguards were tragically absent in David's case. The jury deliberated, every second stretched into an eternity. David clung to a desperate hope that logic, that truth would somehow prevail. But then the verdict came. Guilty, the foreman's voice cut through the silence. The single word hung in the air, heavy and final, like the swing of an executioner's axe. The gavel struck a sound that reverberated through David's very bones, sealing his fate. He stood there unmoving, the blood draining from his face as if he'd been struck. Maria in the gallery let out a strangled sob that was quickly hushed. That moment wasn't just the end of a trial. It was the brutal severing of his entire life, casting him into a darkness from which escape seemed utterly impossible. And this tragically was only the beginning of his true ordeal. The cold metallic clang of the prison gates wasn't just a sound. It was the definitive period at the end of David's old life. Inside, the world shifted, transformed into a stark, brutal existence. The air hung heavy with the stale stench of disinfectant and despair, mingling with the distant shouts and the jarring clatter of steel. This wasn't just a building. It was a sensory assault designed to strip away individuality and grind down the spirit. David, a man used to the satisfying thrum of an engine and the comforting warmth of his home, was now just a number. Every movement, every moment dictated by unseen forces. The indignity was immediate. The rough fabric of the state-issued uniform, the meager, unidentifiable food, the constant low-level hum of threats and tension. Privacy was a forgotten luxury, replaced by the relentless, invasive gaze of guards and fellow inmates. For David, an innocent man, this wasn't just a punishment. It was a prolonged, excruciating torture of the soul. But beyond the physical torment, the psychological battle raged. How do you hold on to sanity when every single day screams guilty, when every waking moment is a chilling reminder of a crime you didn't commit? David fought. He fought the bitterness that threatened to consume him, the desperate ache for the scent of Maria's hair, the distant memory of his children's laughter. He'd stare at the bare concrete walls, tracing imaginary lines, trying to conjure their faces, clinging to those precious images like fragments of light in an endless night. He saw other inmates surrender to the despair, their eyes vacant, their spirits broken. He vowed he wouldn't be one of them. Yet even in that bleak landscape, flickers of human connection endured. Perhaps it was the quiet nod from a grizzled older inmate, his eyes holding the wisdom of too many years behind bars, offering a wordless comfort. Or the heartbreaking muffled phone calls with Maria, her voice a lifeline, her unwavering belief a constant source of strength that transcended the physical barriers. "We're fighting, David," she'd whisper, her voice thick with unshed tears. "We won't give up." Every birthday missed, every anniversary forgotten, every fleeting childhood moment slipping away. These weren't just calendar dates. They were gaping wounds in David's soul, constant bleeding reminders of the irreversible loss inflicted by a system's profound mistake. His plight wasn't unique. Countless innocent lives, disproportionately those from marginalized communities, have been swallowed whole by this very system. This was David's brutal reality, day after agonizing day, a testament to the incredible, stubborn resilience of a man determined to hold on to his truth even when the world refused to see it. Years blurred into an endless cycle of concrete walls and steel bars, each passing day chipping away at David's hope. Yet beyond those walls, a different kind of tireless work was unfolding. Enter the Innocence Project. Not just an abstract name, but a beacon of relentless dedication embodied by a young, brilliant attorney named Lena Kim. Lena believed in the quiet power of science to cut through the loudest noise of injustice. David's case, buried under layers of forgotten paperwork, caught her discerning eye. It wasn't just the eyewitness identification that troubled her. It was the chilling absence of definitive physical evidence that truly gnawed at her conscience. Lena plunged into a painstaking fight against bureaucracy, against institutional skepticism, against a system reluctant to admit its own fallibility. Imagine Lena tirelessly poring over dense legal documents and faded police reports late into the night, fueled by cold coffee and an unshakable sense of duty, piecing together forgotten timelines, fighting for access to crucial evidence that should have been examined more thoroughly years ago. "There's something here," she'd murmur to her colleagues, pointing to a faded notation about trace evidence. "I can feel it." The very thought that a man could be imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit simply because the technology wasn't advanced enough or the procedures weren't stringent enough at the time was a fire in her belly. The suspense built with every passing week. Samples were meticulously collected, carefully transported to the lab. The waiting was excruciating. For David, for Maria, for Lena. Every ring of the phone, every new email notification held the potential to either shatter their fragile hope or ignite it into a roaring flame. Then came the first quiet tremor of a twist that would send ripples through everyone involved. Lena, with a delicate touch, reached out to Elena Rodriguez. Elena, the victim who had so confidently identified David years ago, was living with her own scars, her own quest for peace. Lena explained the advancements in DNA technology, the haunting possibility of a mistake. For Elena, this wasn't just about reopening an old wound. It was about confronting the terrifying notion that her own memory had betrayed her, that the justice she believed she'd found was built on a terrible error. It took immense courage, a profound act of self-reflection. But Elena, driven by her own deep-seated desire for true justice, agreed to cooperate. If I was wrong, Elena told Lena, her voice barely a whisper, I need to know. For him, for me, for the truth. This decision from the woman whose testimony had put David behind bars was a profound act of grace and a testament to her own strength. The results finally arrived. The call Lena had fought for years to receive. She saw the email, the subject line stark and immediate. Her hands trembled as she clicked it open. The lab confirmed it. The DNA from the crime scene was a clear, undeniable match to another unknown individual. And just as definitively, David Miller's DNA was nowhere to be found. Lena let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The truth etched in the helix of life itself had finally emerged. The earth-shattering reality that hit everyone, David, Maria, Lena, and even Elena, was a tidal wave of vindication that washed over years of injustice, a profound moment of scientific clarity slicing through layers of human error and bias. The prison gates, once a symbol of insurmountable walls, finally swung open for David. The joy of that moment was immense, overwhelming, a raw, unfiltered burst of freedom. He stumbled out blinking in the harsh sunlight, a free man. Maria rushed into his arms, their embrace, a desperate attempt to bridge the chasm of lost years, her face streaked with tears of relief and sorrow. His children, now young adults, stood by their eyes, holding a blend of excitement and a quiet distance that spoke of stolen childhoods. "Dad," his son said, his voice cracking, "you're home." But beneath the surface of relief, a bittersweet reality began to settle in. The world outside had continued spinning, heedless of the years David had lost. The simple act of crossing a busy street, once automatic, now felt daunting, the rush of traffic a dizzying blur. The phone in his hand felt alien, a sleek rectangle of confusing apps and endless notifications. David, a man whose hands instinctively knew the intricate workings of engines, found himself navigating a world where much of the familiar had vanished. "It's like I woke up in a different century," he joked once, a wry smile failing to mask the disorientation. His journey wasn't just about breathing free air. It was about the profound, often quiet struggle of re-entry and rebuilding. The hidden burden of exonerees, not just recovering what was lost, but forging a new path in a world that didn't wait. But David, a man who had held on to his truth in the darkest of places, was not one to be defeated. His story, once a personal nightmare, became a powerful testament to the human spirit's capacity to heal, to adapt, and to fight for what's right. He reconnected with Maria, slowly bridging the chasm of lost years, finding new ways to laugh with his now-grown children. And from his deeply personal pain, a profound purpose emerged. David became an unlikely advocate, working alongside Lena Kim and the Innocence Project, his voice a living, breathing testament to the profound flaws in the justice system. "What happened to me," David would tell audiences, his voice steady, "can happen to anyone. We have to do better." His experience became a rallying cry for systemic change. We learned through David's ordeal the critical importance of reforms like blind eyewitness identification procedures, where the officer showing the lineup doesn't know who the suspect is, eliminating unconscious bias. We saw the absolute necessity of meticulously preserving DNA evidence, ensuring that future truths aren't lost in dusty archives. And most profoundly, David's story underscored the ethical imperative for every person within the justice system to prioritize truth above all else. His journey redefined justice, not just as punishment, but as an ongoing quest for integrity and unwavering fairness. David Miller's ordeal began with a single mistaken image, but his legacy is one of clarity and unwavering purpose. It's a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, the truth has a way of surfacing, and that hope once rekindled can ignite a movement for change. His story isn't just about an innocent man freed. It's a testament to resilience, a call to action for a more just society, and a quiet, profound message that from the depths of despair, we can always find the strength to fight for what's right and build a better future for all. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think, made you feel, then please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that challenge, inspire, and remind us of the incredible human spirit. Your support helps us amplify these crucial stories. Thank you for listening.